I discovered Bearden a few years ago. Maxine Gordon, again, she's a great muse and a mover and shaker, helping people get in touch with their creativity. She gave me a copy of Bob's book, Robert O'Mealy's book on Romare Bearden and the Odyssey. I fell in love with his work immediately, and I had a strong sense of identification with him as, I hate to use these terms because they're so foreign to my own thinking, but as a light-skinned African American who was anxious to take the Black experience into universal terms and break out of the prisons that have been constructed around what we call race issues in the United States. And he came to Paris in 1951. I came 10 years later in 1961 and had a very similar experience of being able to be simply a member of the human race and not be asked to take sides. My mother is a Jewish American, Polish Jew originally, born in the United States, and she and my father met in the late 30s at a meeting of the Young Communist League where there were no questions of segregation. And very wisely, my parents had told me that I never had to choose, but I was always being asked to choose, well, are you white or are you Black? And this was a source of perpetual discomfort and even pain for me when I was growing up. Another question that I hated was, where are you from, little girl? When I was, in fact, born in Brooklyn and raised in Harlem. And in my own eyes, very American. I hated being asked as if I was a foreigner where I was from. But in fact, I did feel like I was a foreigner in my own land. And I think that Bearden's experience, as he tells it in the Odyssey, is something that I believed was the same story. That in a sense, we are all foreigners in our own land and on a quest for a sense of homecoming. And Bob O'Mealy said at one point that Edward Said, the Palestinian who taught at Columbia University and lived in the United States for many, many years, once said that he was ill at ease wherever he was. And for many years, this was my experience. And I think that Bearden's Odyssey, at a symbolic level, tells of this feeling of being ill at ease until finally Odysseus comes home to Penelope and his adventures are resolved by a feeling of homecoming. And yet, it is said that he, in the Bearden portrait of Odysseus, he looks as if he's anxious for his next adventure. And my own story of leaving the United States to live in a society where I felt ill at ease because I knew I was a foreigner and would never be a French woman living in France, although at one point I did try to become the perfect French woman. has its echoes with the Bearden story of the Odyssey. And now, today, I feel less ill at ease when I'm in the United States and living here in France with my children and grandchildren. And I think that my homecoming has been to finally, after many years of feeling torn, of missing the United States, or at least my experience of it, Harlem and my friends from Harlem, my family who are still in the United States, and then feeling like a foreigner whenever I would go back, so that I could never eradicate that feeling of missing home, and then coming back here and knowing that I was a foreigner. I finally was able to move through all of that to understanding that my homecoming is being with like-minded people and having a sense of community with people who are experiencing the same feelings of being ill at ease wherever they are, but working through those feelings to, in their search for community at a global level, accepting differentness, whatever it may be. And I have to say that I was with Professor O'Mealy on Wednesday. We were in a cafe, and suddenly there was a news flash about the terrorist attack on Charlie Hebdo, and it was devastating for me to hear this, and it certainly cast a pall on my friend Bob's experience of being here, preparing for this exhibition. And these are very troubled times. I think we've come such a long way in many aspects, and yet we seem to have regressed in the world with sources of fundamentalist thinking of all kinds, where differences are once again the boogeyman instead of being our wealth. And when I found out that there was going to be a march, a quiet march in solidarity of the victims, but also a way of saying that we would not live in fear of the violence that the fear of difference and ignorance in the world can foster. I invited Bob to the march, and he said he felt very torn because he had this exhibition to prepare, but he also wanted to go on the march. I thought it would be a healing experience for him to, being here at this time, to participate in such a demonstration of great strength. And I told him that preparation of such an exhibition that is a celebration of our differences and a celebration of our common humanity was also a way of healing from such violence, and that he should feel very free to continue on with this work, which is so sorely needed, because I'm convinced that education is, and also the eradication of poverty, are the sources that will, in the end, do away with the terror that the world is experiencing today.
Can I ask a quick follow-up?
Yes, please.
I guess one thing that occurs to me is, within all these questions of, finding a place and the travels that are our lives, in a sense, the journeys of our lives to find a place in the world and to become at home in the world in some sense. I mean, there are all these, there are these important, large questions, and I guess, I guess I wonder, in a sense. I mean, I think about those issues, and I see the Bearden works, and essentially, one might say, they're pieces of colored paper, cut into shapes, put in these arrangements and visual arrangements, and depicting these scenes. And what is it about something so simple? It's just like these cutout. How can these cutout shapes of paper, articulate these, large questions about, how we live our lives, and how different people come together and relate to. You see what I'm saying? It's like the artwork is so simple in one sense, just in terms of the materials and, they're kind of flat forms, and I guess the question is, how from that simplicity do you think they get the power to engage with these larger questions?
Well, when I was translating one of the texts for the catalog, there was a description of Bearden in his workshop as if dancing, moving around his workshop, working with the colors and bringing it together. And even in the text describing this, there was tremendous music. And one of the things I tried to do as a translator was transpose this musical element of Bearden's work and the description of it in the text into another language. This is a parenthesis about one of the translation issues, which is that English is a much more flexible language than French. French is a very formal language, and there are many things that can be expressed originally in English by substituting a noun for a verb, or using verbs together in an exciting new way. And for French, it's more difficult to walk outside the box, as it were, of the syntax of the language. But what helped me was the musical element and the jazz aspects of Bearden's work and Matisse's work. And I think, it is said that music is the universal language, and I think that Bearden's work is like a jazz improvisation, that I could almost... when I was in that room yesterday at the show, I felt two things. I felt that it was indeed an odyssey, that we were on a boat traveling, that everything was moving. And I also heard the music. And I think that this is what helps bring Bearden's cutouts to a place of symbolic meaning, with sources of identification for everyone from everywhere.